Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Savi, and thank you for inviting me to this platform. It definitely is giving me an opportunity to share a few things that I've learned while working with startups over the past couple of years. So, what I really wanted to discuss today, or rather talk about, is the role of design in startups, right? And how do you really start working towards a minimum viable experience and not just a minimum viable product? And why do I specifically want to talk about role of design in startups is because design by its very nature is considered to be a process, right, which involves various steps, right? Discovery, understanding the problem, finding a solution, and repeating it n number of times until and unless you figure out the right solution. uh, this kind of an approach works perfectly fine when you are working in an organization which has reached certain level of design maturity. But in startups, what happens is that the ecosystem is very closely knit, right? Say about 50 people, 60 people, they're working together day and night. Everybody is making sure that the decisions that are being taken are correct. And then this circular loop that the design keeps working in, if it is not introduced to others, it later on wastes a lot of time in convincing others and telling everybody that, hey, whatever we are proposing is right? So with time in and time out, what a designer working at startups or the design team in the startups need to do is that introduce the rest of the people to this process as and when required, right? So, like I said, this is something that's needed. But what's this all about? Why is there a need of doing this, right? And I think, like most of you who are designers or even developers for that matter, or project managers, might have come across this phase where the developers basically, where the designers, I'm sorry, they are going through the chaos. They are figuring out what the product needs. They attain a certain level of clarity, and then they propose a solution, which then they distribute through the developer as well as go ahead and show it to the decision makers or the product owners for their feedback, right? And the flaw that this system has is that they definitely show the end result, but they do not really give them the clarity that they have attained while figuring out the solution. And because of this, what happens that the biases that are needed to be eliminated are not eliminated, and the developer is confused as to whether he should be listening to design or whether he or she should be listening to the product owner. And this communication gap, if it is not addressed at the right time, just keeps amplifying. And no matter how good the design team is, it still is not able to perfectly create the intention, or I would say ship the right experience, because there are so many biases already into the system, which eventually is not anybody's goal, right? So with time, after working with so many startups, we have realized, me and my team, of course, we have realized that, hey, there are a few roles that designers should be playing in some time or the other, so that the others also get a peek into their work, and then they're convinced with whatever work they're doing. And um, and yeah, so I'll be discussing about those roles. I've figured out, like, I'll be discussing just about the 5 roles. And after that, I do have a few other roles as well, but that probably we can take some time else. And let's get started. So the first role is of a curious student. And right, yeah, and that phase is basically like, hey, I'm dumb and I know that I'm dumb, you have to tell me everything, right? And this basically actually helps in making sure that the teacher here, who is the product owner, knows what he's not knowing. So when I keep asking them so many questions, I keep forcing them to answering certain facts that they haven't even thought about. It puts them into a position where they actually start feeling, actually start thinking, okay, my what does my existence even mean, right? And that's when that's the time that I'm forcing them to go through a chaos, because to attain clarity, they also need to go through the chaos, right? And they initially start talking about the problems in a very abstract fashion. And once these questions are introduced into the system or into the room, their abstraction, their abstracted idea, which has not been articulated pretty well, starts getting articulated in a very, very communicable fashion, which is transferable into a product, right? Say, for example, somebody would start beginning by saying that, hey, I need an application to build, I need to build an application to whale taxis, right? But when I keep asking them multiple questions, they start coming down to the fundamental requirements, which is, hey, I need to build a product that basically helps people or users go from point A to point B, right? And this actually, the outcome of this is so perfectly articulated that the first step towards building of the product is so productive in itself that the rest of the steps are actually trying to match this first step, and there are less chances of you wasting time. That's the first role, right? Coming to the second role, which is basically a role of a storyteller, of course a fascinating role, but the idea behind this role is that whenever we tell story, it actually communicates the intention and purpose in the most perfect way, right? That's why we tell children so many stories, right? And these stories basically are give leaves imprints on people's brain, and they're remembered for so like they convert into good memories, right? And why is this important is because whenever we are creating use cases and we are nailing down the scope, if I just send out an email telling them, hey guys, this is the scope, these are the use cases, people might not really remember it so much, right? And to give them a perfect vision, I need them to be able to feel what I'm feeling. So what we do is that we convert it into a story, and the highlights of the story are converted into illustrations of storyboards, and we stick it right everywhere in the office. This actually brings them on board with the fact that, hey, this is the vision that we all are aspiring for together, and they stop considering themselves as average users, right? And that's what one of the things that Facebook had faced for a lot of time, that their designers were from America, and they would consider themselves as average designers. And after say 2-3 years, their parents started using mobile, which were parents started using Facebook, and they were essentially from India, they were from South America, they were from South Africa. And this approach of considering themselves, the designers to considering themselves as average users, did not really work fine, right? So this is the second step we do. We first bring clarity into the system, and then we start making sure that this clarity is conveyed to everybody in the form of a story. The third role, which we all play, and I really like to call it a nuclear reactor, whereas the others, they usually call it an idea reactor, where we actually, there's a phase where we welcome everybody who is interested in giving ideas to us into a room. We close that room and we make them work like children, right? We divide them into the teams, and then they are just going around and figuring out the ideas and doing this and that. The reason why we found that this was an important thing to do is because with our experience, and I'm sure if there are designers who are there in the who are actually watching this video, you know that as soon as I take wireframes into the room, I'm showing wireframes to people, everybody starts giving their ideas. Like, hey, where's this button over here? Hey, why should we highlight this? Hey, let's do this. Let's add this also. And that becomes a very tricky situation to handle. But if you think about it deep down, it's actually the innate ability of anybody that comes out, which is of proposing solutions, which is of solving problems, right? And that is something that we all have always been. It's just that a few of us who are problem solvers are take that up as a career choice, while the other just do it on the day-to-day basis, right? And if that weren't the case, we probably might have not evolved. So what we do, we trigger an idea, we lead them into a room, we do a practice for half an hour. For half an hour, we divide them into a team, and then boom, we get so many ideas, which is a pool of ideas, and that actually also promotes the fact that, hey, everybody in the organization is as close to the product as the designers are, right? So that's the third role that we play. The fourth role, which I really admire the most, is the role of a sculptor, right? So why a sculptor as an artist is somebody who's like, I really, really respect, because these guys, what they do is that they convert a solid material into a masterpiece by subtracting layers of things, of materials that are not useful, right? And as designers, I'm pretty sure you guys might have also even if you're not designers, even if you're regular developers or you're product managers or product owners, you must have realized that after a while, no matter how much you try to limit the scope, you get caught into a loop where you are figuring out, hey, I have so much time, but I also have so many ideas, right? So these features which you are actually looking at, they are needed to be eliminated, right? And of course, it's not that you are going to eliminate all the features at once. They're going to come up in the future, but it's about mindfully selecting the ones that are to be picked up at the right time. So you know how the good designers should be knowing how to sacrifice this and rationally sacrifice them, not just sacrifice for the sake of sacrificing, but actually rationally sacrifice them. That's the fourth rule that a designer should be playing while working in a startup, along with the process that they follow. The fifth and the most important step that we are thinking that we should be playing is that the role of a perfect partner, right? And I know like everybody has a few ideas about how a perfect partner should be, and we can keep talking about it on and on. But a, from our perspective, from a designer's perspective, we see that there are a lot of ego clashes, and I don't want to, I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong word, but there are a lot of clashes in between designers, developers, product managers, product owners. There are project managers also involved, and there is C-suite, and all of them are constantly competing against each other, and they are not really working together for the betterment of product, especially in the case of startups, right? So what a designer essentially needs to understand or play a role of is of a perfect partner who is not egocentric, who is actually empowering everybody to make the right decision, right? And that's what I mean when I say that the designer should be playing the role of a perfect partner, who is not just like there as a guest, right? It's not treated as a guest in the room, but he's given the freedom to go back to that storeroom where there's a spider and then there's a spider's web, clean that up, wait till the whitewash happens, and then leaves, right? Because design, as and I'm pretty sure the other designers as well, they would actually not stop working on any design until and unless the design is shipped and is being used by the user. So these are a couple of roles that are that we have come up with that a person should be playing while designing for a startup, I would say. And yeah, so this is something that I would like to end with. And if you have any questions, we can actually address them now or in the session after this. You all can reach out to me at aditi@infinitive.com, or you can send your requests, or you can follow me on Infinitive on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to help you with it. Thank you. All right.